I want you to sit with this truth for a moment. Demons don't always wear horns. Sometimes they wear smiles you've known your whole life. They come to family dinners. They hold your hand during prayer. They say, I love you, but their spirit hates your purpose. And because they're familiar, you second guess yourself. You chalk it up to bad vibes, miscommunication, or a bad day. But deep down, you know something just doesn't feel right. I remember a time in my life when I was stepping into something bigger than myself. Purpose, calling, vision. You know that season where things finally start to make sense? Where you feel that wind behind your back like God is pushing you forward? But every time I tried to celebrate, someone close would dim the lights. Don't get ahead of yourself. Are you sure that's for you? Remember where you came from. At first I thought it was concern. I thought they were being cautious, maybe even wise. But what I learned is this. Some demons disguise themselves as protectors, but they're really prison guards. They want to keep you locked in the old version of yourself because your growth threatens their comfort. And that's when I realized demons don't always attack your body. Some attack your identity. They whisper through people who say, that's not who you are, when deep down, God is calling you to evolve. Some demons don't need to possess you. They just need to be close enough to influence you through sarcasm, through guilt, through silence. Have you ever told a dream to someone you trusted and their face twisted, not in doubt, but in disgust, masked as disbelief? That's spiritual warfare in slow motion. That's not love. That's opposition in a familiar body. And that's the enemy's favorite tactic. He doesn't fight fair. He fights smart. He knows you'll rebuke a stranger, but you'll entertain a relative. You'll block a hater, but keep texting the one you grew up with. You'll ignore the critic, but keep giving your soul to the friend who smiles when you're losing and disappears when you're winning. The devil doesn't need to scare you if he can blend in. He doesn't need to destroy you if he can just distract you. Through loyalty to the wrong people, through trauma bonds, through childhood history, through spiritual manipulation. That's why some of y'all are tired and don't even know why. Because you're being spiritually bled dry by people who claim to love you but never lift you. You're trying to carry people who secretly hope you drop the weight because your success would remind them of their own stagnation. So when I say demons wear familiar faces, I'm not saying be paranoid. I'm saying be discerning. Start listening not just to what people say, but to how you feel in their presence. Watch how they react when you succeed. Look at the patterns, not just the promises. Because sometimes the devil's most powerful weapon isn't fear, it's familiarity. Energy never lies, but people do, and they lie well with words so smooth you question your instincts, with smiles so warm you second guess your own spirit. But if you've ever walked into a room and felt your chest tighten, your peace slip, your joy shrink, that wasn't just nerves. That was your spirit reacting to something your eyes couldn't see. I used to ignore that feeling. I used to brush it off, like maybe I was just in a bad mood. Maybe I was being too sensitive. But over time, I learned that energy introduces truth before language does. And if your spirit is screaming while someone is talking softly, trust your spirit. I remember a time I was building something sacred, a dream, a ministry, a business. I had someone close to me, always around, always smiling, always clapping. But I started to notice something. Every time I made progress, their support felt thinner. Their words got slicker. Their vibe got colder. And I didn't want to admit it because I loved them, because I trusted them. But deep down, I could feel it. Their energy had shifted, even if their words hadn't. That's the thing about spiritual sensitivity. It doesn't give you facts. It gives you truth. And the truth will hit your chest before it hits your ears. You don't need receipts when God gives you revelation. You don't need them to confess when your discernment already convicted the moment. Some of y'all are still holding conversations with people your spirit has already cut off. You're still seeking clarity when God already gave you confirmation. And you're confused, not because you don't know, but because you're trying not to believe what you know in your bones. Because it hurts, right? To admit that someone you love, someone you've shared life with, is now carrying a spirit that conflicts with yours. But understand this, just because someone is familiar doesn't mean they're aligned. Just because someone is kind doesn't mean they're clean. There are people who will smile in your face, but every time they speak, your spirit feels drained. It's not anxiety, it's discernment. It's not insecurity, it's insight. You feel heavy because you're sitting next to someone who's hiding a dagger behind their encouragement. And you know what's wild? Some of these people don't even realize they're being used. They're not your enemy, but something on them is. That bitterness, that jealousy, that passive-aggressive joke, that fake support, that's not just personality, that's spiritual contamination. You don't have to have proof to make a decision. You have permission to protect your peace even when you can't explain it. You're allowed to leave a room that suffocates your joy. You're allowed to walk away from a conversation that scrapes at your purpose. You're allowed to say, something here doesn't feel right, and not owe anybody an explanation. Because the enemy doesn't always use storms. Sometimes he uses small talk. He won't always roar. Sometimes he whispers through people you love. And while their mouths say one thing, the atmosphere around them tells the real story. And your job as a warrior, as a believer, as someone chosen, is to stop ignoring what your soul has been screaming. Because energy never lies. It speaks, and it reveals, and it exposes every time. You want to know how the enemy really works? He doesn't always come through destruction. No, he's much slicker than that. He comes through delay, not denial. Delay, not no, but not yet. And that's why so many people miss their moment, not because they weren't gifted, not because they weren't called, but because they let someone talk them into waiting when God said move. The devil's plan isn't always to stop you. Sometimes it's just to slow you down, to plant that tiny seed of hesitation. That little voice that says, maybe next year, maybe after the kids grow up, maybe when I'm more ready. But guess what? That readiness never comes, because the moment you delay, the enemy gets a foothold. That's all he needs. A foothold becomes a stronghold, and a stronghold becomes a lifestyle of postponing purpose, a routine of almost starting, a calendar full of intentions but no action. And what's crazy is sometimes the people slowing you down aren't even doing it with bad intentions. They think they're protecting you. They think they're being realistic. They don't even know they're being used by a spirit of fear dressed up as wisdom. They say things like, just wait till things calm down. You need more experience. Don't rush it. You've got time. But here's the truth. Delay can be demonic. Because what you delay, you disarm. And what you disarm, you devalue. That dream God gave you, it didn't come with a 5-year plan. It came with fire. It came with urgency. And the longer you sit on it, the colder it gets. I've seen it too many times. People with anointing, people with oil, people who were set apart, but they never stepped into what God had for them because they kept waiting for permission. They kept waiting for a green light from people who never even left the parking lot. Let me tell you something. You don't need a crowd's approval to obey God. You don't need consensus to be obedient. If God said go, go. If God said build, build. If God said speak, speak. Because every minute you wait is a minute the enemy celebrates. You don't have time to play nice with delay. You don't have time to entertain voices that sound safe but are sent to slow your assignment. You think it's harmless, just taking time. But in the spirit realm, every delay is a spiritual negotiation. Every pause is a possible trade-off. Your calling for your comfort your fire for their approval. The enemy doesn't need to crash your car if he can just get you to take the scenic route. He'll let you keep driving as long as you never arrive. And what's even more dangerous is that delay doesn't always feel demonic. Sometimes it feels smart. It feels reasonable. It feels mature. But the devil's not stupid. He wraps fear in logic. He wraps stagnation in comfort. He whispers doubt with a calm voice, so you don't even realize you're being spiritually sedated. There are demons whose only job is to make you second guess what God already told you. So you better start asking, who in your circle keeps telling you to wait? Who keeps saying, not yet, when you know God said now? Who keeps pushing your obedience into the future disguised as caution? Because the enemy doesn't need to slam the door. All he has to do is make you too tired to knock. And if he can't kill your calling, he'll convince you to reschedule it indefinitely. You can't fight what you won't face. And you can't face what you refuse to see. That's the reason so many people are losing battles they don't even know they're in. Because spiritual warfare requires spiritual vision. This isn't just about what you see with your eyes, it's about what you sense in your spirit. Because the real attacks, they don't come dressed in obvious darkness. They come disguised in familiarity, in convenience, in people you love, in patterns you've normalized. Some of y'all are swinging at shadows because you haven't stopped to discern the source of your resistance. You keep saying, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, I feel blocked. But the problem isn't outside of you, it's around you. There's a spiritual presence sitting in your atmosphere that you've mistaken for coincidence or bad luck. But this isn't luck. This is warfare. And you've been spiritually asleep at the front line. I had to learn this myself. There was a season in my life where everything looked good on the surface: success, support, relationships. But in my spirit, chaos, restlessness, heavy nights, anxious mornings. And I kept trying to fix things in the natural, changing schedules, adjusting my goals, tweaking my plans. But the pressure wouldn't lift because the issue wasn't natural, it was spiritual. I wasn't being attacked in my circumstances, I was being attacked in my clarity. Because the enemy knows that if he can blind you spiritually, he doesn't need to stop you. You'll walk right into destruction on your own. You'll trust the wrong voices, you'll follow the wrong crowd, you'll partner with people who look clean but carry corruption. Not because you're weak, but because you're not watching with your spirit. Let me tell you something. There are demons dressed in opportunity. There are spirits of confusion wearing the mask of friendship. There are assignments of darkness hiding behind contracts, relationships, divine connections that were never divine. They were distractions dressed up as destiny. And if you don't have spiritual vision, you will welcome these things into your life like blessings, only to find yourself bound. This is why discernment is not optional. It's essential. Not everyone who prays with you is praying for you. Not everyone who supports you in public wants to see you elevated in private. Some people are only closed so they can study your patterns and sabotage your peace. And if you can't see it spiritually, you'll call it loyalty when it's really a legal entry point for warfare. There's some people and places carrying atmospheres of confusion, and the moment you step into them, you feel it, your thoughts get cloudy, your energy gets low, your joy gets quiet. That's not just emotional, that's spiritual interference. And you'll never recognize it if all you rely on is logic. We're living in a world that teaches people to trust what they see and question what they sense. But in the kingdom, it's reverse. The spirit realm is more real than what's in front of you. That's why God didn't tell us to walk by sight. He said walk by faith. And faith gives you the lens to see what eyes can't. Motive, atmosphere, alignment, anointing. And when you start seeing in the spirit, your entire life changes. You stop being shocked when people fall off because your discernment already saw their expiration date. You stop fighting battles you were never called to because your vision knows which ones are distractions. You stop attaching to people just because they're available and start aligning with those who carry kingdom oil. This is spiritual warfare, and it's subtle. The enemy isn't always loud. He moves in suggestion, confusion, compromise, fatigue. And the only way to survive it is to see it. So stop asking for better circumstances and start asking for sharper vision. Pray for eyes that pierce through smiles and see spirits, for ears that filter truth from flattery, for a heart that doesn't just feel but knows. Because once your spiritual eyes open, you won't just fight harder, you'll fight smarter.